The sun burned hot over the dry village square. The ground was cracked and dusty. A few thin trees stood around the edges, offering no real shade. The air smelled like sweat, dirt, and something worse fear. Flies buzzed everywhere. Chickens scratched in the corners. But all eyes were on the wooden platform in the center dot. It wasn't there yesterday. Someone had built it fast. It was made of broken boards and nailed together rough. But it held steady. On top of it stood a tall, bony man with wild eyes and a dirty shirt. His boots were worn through. His face was red from shouting. "Strong girl." He barked, grabbing the arm of the oldest girl standing behind him. "She can cook, clean, carry water, just like her mother did." The girl didn't speak. She didn't cry. But her eyes were hard and tired. Her dress was too big, faded from the sun and full of patches. Her hair hung in a loose braid, the ends fraying. She stood tall, but her hands were shaking. Behind her stood 3 more girls, all younger. They held on to each other tightly, like they were the only solid thing in the world. The youngest looked like a child. She couldn't have been older than 12. Her sandals were too small. One strap was broken, and she limped slightly as she stood. Her face was blank, but her eyes were wide with fear. The people in the crowd said nothing. Some looked down. Few turned away. One mother held her child close and walked off. A group of boys nearby laughed nervously and then grew quiet. The crowd wasn't large, but it was enough to make it worse. Enough to make it real. The father kept shouting prices. 10 diners. Who will start the bid? Look at them, strong girls. They'll earn their keep. They'll work hard. No one answered. That's when the cart rolled in. It was pulled by an old mule and moved slow. The wheels creaked with every turn. The man driving it was quiet, his eyes shaded under a wide hat. He was tall and broad, with a sun-worn face and a thick coat of dust on his boots. His name was Jallow. He was a wheat farmer from the hills to the west. He had come down to trade flour, cooking oil, and eggs. He stopped his cart near the edge of the square. His eyes narrowed as he watched the scene in front of him. He stepped off slowly, walking across the dust, boots crunching dry leaves beneath his steps. He didn't shout. He didn't look angry. But there was something heavy about the way he walked, like every step carried weight. He moved through the silent crowd until he stood near the platform. Then he spoke. "Is this what we are now?" he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Selling our daughters in the open sun?" The father glared at him. "You don't know what it's like to starve," he snapped. "I've got nothing. No food, no land. These girls, they ain't worth dying over." Jallow didn't answer right away. He looked at the girls one by one. Their eyes met his, quick and nervous. The oldest one, Isla, looked at him for just a second longer. Her face didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Something small, like a light trying not to go out. Jallow stepped closer to the platform. "You'd sell your own." "Blood?" he asked. The father looked away. "Better to be sold than buried in the mud." Jallow nodded once. Then he said, "I'll take them." The father blinked. "You'll pay?" Jallow shook his head. "Not to own. Not to buy. I have a home, work, a roof and food. I'll take them in." A few people in the crowd scoffed. One man laughed. But when Jallow turned and looked at him, the man fell quiet. The father looked unsure. His shoulders dropped like a man finally giving. "Up," he waved a hand. "Take them then," he muttered. "They're yours to deal with now." Still, the girls didn't move. Jallow climbed the steps of the platform and held out his hand to the eldest. She didn't take it right away, but slowly, like a frightened animal, she reached out and placed her hand in his. He helped her down, Then he turned to the next girl, Yasmin. She hesitated, but when Ela nodded slightly, she followed. Then Hannah, the third girl, small and quiet. And lastly, Amal, the youngest, who clutched her sister's dress with all her strength. One by one, Jallow helped them down. He didn't speak. He didn't try to smile. He just led them toward his cart. The crowd stayed silent. The girls sat in the back, still holding on to each other. They didn't look back. Jallow climbed into the seat and picked up the reins dot as the cart began to roll out of the square. No one spoke. Not the girls. Not the crowd. Not Jallow. But something changed in that square dot, something invisible. Something quiet, and it would never be the same again. The cart moved slowly across the dry road leading out of the village. The mules' hooves made soft thuds on the packed dirt. Behind Jallow sat the four sisters, huddled together in silence. Their faces were tight, their eyes watching the trees and sky like strangers in a world they didn't trust. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed quiet. The sun dropped lower, casting long shadows over the hills. The sky turned orange and gold. Jallow drove without a word. He didn't try to ask questions. He just let the road speak for now. Dotted was a long ride to the farm. The land slowly changed. Dusty fields gave way to green hills and rows of olive trees. Chickens ran loose near fences. Goats wandered near stone walls. Birds chirped in the distance. It was quiet country, simple but full of life. Finally, as the sun dipped behind the ridge, the house came into view. It was not large, but strong, built from stone and sun-baked brick, with blue wooden shutters and a wide porch covered in grapevines. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was cooking inside. Jallow stopped the cart near the barn. He stepped down and looked up at the porch. A woman had stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. Her braid was long and silver-threaded, and her eyes were sharp but kind. This was Mira Jallow's wife. She saw the four girls in the cart, sitting still as stone. She didn't ask who they were. She didn't ask why they were here. She looked once at Jallow, then walked forward. "They'll be staying," Jallow said softly. Mira didn't nod. She didn't speak. She simply reached up and offered a hand to the eldest girl. Isla hesitated. Her eyes moved from Jallow to Mira. Then slowly she took the hand and stepped down. Her sisters followed, one by one. Mira led them inside. The house smelled like warm bread, lentil stew, and herbs. The wooden floor creaked gently as they walked. The walls were covered in handmade cloth, old photos, and shelves of dried flowers. Mira didn't ask anything. She set bowls of food on the table: warm soup, fresh bread, sliced fruit, water in clay cups. The girls sat down, still unsure. They ate slowly, like they were waiting for the food to be taken away. Mira said only, "There's more if you're still hungry." After they ate, she gave them clean clothes, simple cotton dresses, soft scarves, wool socks. She brought a bowl of warm water and let them wash. Then she led them up the ladder to the loft above the main room. There were mats on the floor and folded blankets. It wasn't much, but it was safe. It was quiet. And it was warm. The girls didn't talk that night. They lay side by side on the mats. Amal, the youngest, cried softly into her sister's arm. The others stayed awake long into the night, listening to the wind in the trees and the soft clucking of chickens outside. In the morning, the sun peeked through the windows. Birds chirped on the roof. The farm had already woken up. Jallow was outside chopping wood. Mira was kneading dough in the kitchen. The girls came down slowly, unsure of what to do. Mira pointed to the porch. "You can help me knead if your hands are clean," she said. She wasn't smiling, but her voice was gentle. Isla stepped forward first. Her hands were rough and strong. She began kneading the dough, just like her mother had taught her long ago. Mira didn't say anything, but a quiet nod passed between them. Yasmin helped feed the chickens. Hannah swept the porch. Amal sat by the olive tree, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. Later that day, 4 young men returned to the house. They were Jallow and Mira's sons. Rafi, the oldest, was tall and quiet. He walked with slow steps, carrying a heavy basket of wheat. His eyes scanned the yard. He noticed the 4 new girls at once. Samir was next, lean and sharp-eyed, with quick hands and a restless smile. He paused when he saw the newcomer's Dot. Then came Tariq. His shirt was smeared with dirt. His face smudged, but he grinned easily. He tipped his hat at Yasmin as he walked by. Last was Hamza, still more boy than man. He was smaller, softer in voice and in face. But his heart showed plainly in the way he watched Amal sitting alone near the tree. Jallow met them all outside the barn. "They're staying," he said simply. "Their home was broken, but they'll live here now. That's all you need to know." The boys didn't argue. They nodded, each in his own way. Rafi with a firm nod, Samir with a half smile, Tariq with a shrug. Hamza said nothing but looked back toward Amal. The first few days passed quietly. The girls stayed mostly together, whispering among themselves. But little by little, the house began to shift. Like a pot settling into new ground Dot, Ela helped Jallow fix a broken fence. Yasmin began digging in the garden. Hannah watched Mira work and slowly started helping in the kitchen. Amal stayed near the olive trees, watching the animals and sketching with twigs. The boys noticed. Rafi began leaving tools near the bench, pretending he forgot them. Samir cracked jokes as he shelled beans near Hannah. Tariq shared an old sketchbook with Yasmin and asked for her opinion. Hamza, shy as ever, left a book near the olive tree where Amal sat. She picked it up, but never said a word. Nobody rushed anything. No one asked for names, for pasts, for promises. But the days moved gently now, softer, quieter. In the warm light of the hills, something broken had begun to mend. And in the silence between chores, in the glances shared across the room, and the soft laughter that returned to the house, something new was starting to grow. The sun was high and the air warm. The wheat fields danced in the wind, their golden heads waving like soft music. On Jallow's farm, life moved at its own quiet pace. But something deeper had begun to shift something inside the walls, inside. The people inside the 4 sisters, who had once stood on a wooden platform. Like items to be sold, it started with small things. Laughter returned. Not loud or wild, but soft and sudden, when Tariq dropped a bucket of apples and blamed the mule, or when Samir made a silly rhyme while peeling potatoes. Even Mira, always quiet and steady, began humming again when she cooked. The girls were changing, but it wasn't fast, it wasn't easy. Fear does not leave quickly. But slowly, like spring follows a hard winter, they began to trust the ground under their feet. Ela, the eldest, became a part of the farm like a strong tree. She helped Jallow in the barn, mended tools, and fixed a door that no one else could repair. Rafi, strong and silent like her, started spending more time nearby, sometimes working beside her, sometimes just watching her hands move. He didn't speak much, neither did she, but something passed between them. Quiet respect. Maybe something more. Yasmin was drawn to the garden. She loved the feel of the earth. Her hands were always dirty, her nails dark with soil, but she smiled. More now. Tariq often came by the garden, offering jokes and wild stories. At first, she didn't answer. But one day she handed him a fig from the tree and said, "Your story was too long." He laughed, and that was the start. Hannah, gentle and careful, stayed close to Mira. She asked about herbs, about sewing, about how to bake the bread just right. Mira showed her everything. Samir often found reasons to pass through the kitchen, leaning on the doorway with a crooked smile. He brought her a dried flower one day, pressed in a page of a book. She didn't say anything, but she wore it in her braid the next morning. Then there was Amal, the youngest. She spoke the least, but she watched everything. She liked to sit beneath the olive trees with a stick in her hand, drawing letters in the dust. One day, Hamza brought her a piece of paper and said, "I can teach you." She looked at him like she didn't believe him, but she took the paper. The next day, he brought another one. Jallow saw it all. He watched from his porch, from the barn, from behind his work. He didn't say much, but he noticed every glance, every smile, every shared task. He saw how his sons treated the girls, not like servants, not like guests, but like something new, like partners, like equals. One evening, after the work was done and the stars had started blinking in the sky, Jallow sat with his sons on the porch. The girls were inside, helping Mira with supper. The boys sat in a half circle, smelling of sweat and hay, their hands rough from the day's work. Jallow looked at them, one by one. "I've seen the way you look at them," he said, "and I see the way they look at you." No one spoke. He leaned forward. "If your hearts are true, then ask, don't take. Don't push, ask them. And if they say no, you walk away. That's love. That's respect. You don't own them. You offer them a life beside you, not under you." His voice was calm, but it rang deep. Samir was the first to speak. "And if they say yes?" Jallow gave a small smile. "Then you protect that yes like it's a fire in winter." The next morning, they acted. Rafi stood by the well, waiting for Isla. He held something in his hand, a small ring, carved from olive wood. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech. He just opened his hand and said, "Walk beside me. No chains, just choice." Ela looked at the ring for a long time. Her lips trembled. Then she took it. "I never thought I'd be asked," she sighed. "Only sold or ordered." He closed her fingers gently around the ring. "You're not something to be given." Samir found Hannah near the garden. He handed her a piece of paper with a drawing on it, a flower, pressed flat. "You make my noise quiet," he said. "That's never happened before." Hannah looked at the flower, then back at him. "You talk too much," she said softly, "but I don't mind it." Tariq didn't ask right away. He left a whistle by Yasmin's window, carved from apricot wood, with a note. "Play it if you want me to talk. Break it if you don't single quotes T.2 days past." Then one morning, the sound of the whistle drifted across the field. Tariq came running, a wide grin on his face. Yasmin stood by the tree. "Don't talk too much," she warned. "Just listen more than you speak." "I can try," he said. "And Amal?" She found Hamza waiting under the olive tree with another paper. He had written the alphabet again, neater this time. "I don't want to scare you," he said. "You don't have to marry me, but I care for you. I'd wait 10 years if I had to." She stared at him with wide eyes. Then she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Her voice was soft as a breeze. "Don't wait 10 years," she whispered. "Just stay beside me." That night, the whole family gathered under the apricot tree. Mira brought tea and dates. The girls wore fresh scarves. The boys sat close beside them, not as owners, but as equals. Jallow watched them all, his hands folded on his lap. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. What had once been broken was now whole. And it was love, not money, not rescue, not luck, that had made it grow. Rain fell gently on the hills that morning. Not a storm, not thunder, just a quiet kind of rain that kissed the earth and made it smell sweet. The roof of the farmhouse ticked with soft drops, and the olive trees shimmered in the light. Everything felt new, like the land itself was starting over. Inside the house, Mira was sewing a white shawl with silver thread. Amal sat beside her, holding a spool of yarn, her fingers careful. She didn't speak much still, but her eyes were clear now. They no longer held the fear they once did. Instead, they held light. Across the yard, Jallow stood at the barn door, watching his sons gather wood, tie ropes, polish shoes. It had been months now since the day he brought the 4 sisters home. Seasons had passed, and so had pain. What once seemed impossible and now turned into quiet joy. Today was special. Today was the day. The sisters would marry, not as girls forced into silence, but as women who had chosen love with their own hearts. The house buzzed with quiet work. Hannah helped Yasmin fix her braid. Ela cleaned her boots and wrapped a green sash around her waist. Amal held a basket of herbs. Mira had picked mint, basil, and wild rose. She would carry it as she walked. No guests were invited, no rich clothes or gold. There were no loud songs or priests. This was not that kind of wedding. It was a family wedding. Simple, honest, real. The ceremony took place under the large apricot tree near the edge of the field. The sun had come out again, and the tree's leaves glowed golden in the morning light. Jallow stood at the front, his hands behind his back. His face was calm, but his eyes shone with quiet pride. Mira stood beside him, holding a small book of verses she loved, verses about kindness, home, and forgiveness. One by one, the sisters walked forward. Ela walked first, beside Rafi. They stood tall, both strong, both silent. No words were needed. Their vows were in their work, in the fence they had fixed together, in the quiet understanding between them. Next came Yasmin and Tariq. Yasmin wore a red ribbon in her hair, and Tariq had tied the same ribbon around his wrist. "She's the root," he whispered, "and I'm the wind." Everyone laughed softly, but the laughter was real, not forced. Hannah and Samir stood hand in hand. She placed a flower behind his ear and said, "Now you talk pretty." He grinned and kissed her hand. Then Amal stepped forward. She held her basket of herbs tight and stood beside Hamza. He didn't say anything. He just smiled, the kind of smile that said everything without sound. Amal looked at Jallow, then Mira. Then she spoke. "I was afraid of people," she said softly. "But not anymore." Tears filled Mira's eyes. After the vows, Jallow placed one hand on each couple's head. It was an old custom, a blessing from the elder. He didn't say much, just, "Be good, be kind, don't lie." Then he stepped back and let the wind carry the rest. That night, the family sat under the stars. A fire crackled. Bread roasted on sticks. Honey and tea were passed around. The goats wandered nearby, and the chickens clucked in their coop. Rafi played a flute. Tariq sang. Hamza recited a small poem he had written. It wasn't perfect, but Amal clapped for him anyway. Later, Jallow sat alone at the edge of the field. The moon was high, silver, and full. Mira walked over and sat beside him. "You did something right," she said. He nodded slowly. "I just couldn't walk away." "No," she said. "You walked toward them." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. Then Mira said something he hadn't expected. "You should go back to that village." Jallow turned. "Why?" "Because more girls will stand on that platform," she said, "and someone else might not stop it." He didn't answer right away. But the next morning, Jallow took the cart and drove alone, back toward the village where it had all begun. The road felt the same, but he was different now. He reached the village square just as the sun was setting, and there it was again. A platform. A man shouting. Two young girls dressed in rags, their faces covered with dust and shame. Jallow stepped off the cart. His boots hit the ground hard. The crowd turned. The man paused. Jallow walked to the front. "Not again?" he said, but the man scoffed. "They're mine. I raised them. I can sell." Jallow didn't let him finish. He reached into his coat and pulled out a paper. It was from the sheriff. A law passed 2 months ago. It banned the public selling of women. A law that Jallow and Mira had helped write. A law now signed with a seal. The crowd went quiet. The man looked nervous. "It's just words, not just words," Jallow said. "Truth." He turned to the girls. "You're coming with me," he said gently. "No one will own you now." The girls looked scared, but one of them nodded. The other followed. Jallow helped them into the cart. He said nothing on the way home. He just drove quietly, the same road he had taken once before. When they reached the farmhouse, Mira was waiting. She looked at the girls. Then she opened the door wide. Moral: sometimes the world does not need heroes with swords. It needs men who say no when everyone else stays silent. It needs women who open their doors. It needs love that asks instead of takes. What Jallow gave was not just shelter. He gave a new beginning.